there, Andy Scheel again. Moving on from the legislative branch now to our next branch of federal government, the executive branch. And we are going to be working through the role of the president, part one, which is going to initialize the leader of the executive branch and many of the qualifications and the length of term that it entails. Originally, the United States, under its first governed document, the Articles of Confederation, did not have an executive branch. They did not want a national leader. They did not want to replicate any sort of monarchy or tyranny that many of them had fled from England through the years. They wanted to have a government run by the people for the people, and that was not to include a national leader or a figure, one figure controlling or dominating how government was run. And after the Constitution was adopted as the governing document of the United States and the Articles of Confederation were thrown out, they did create an executive branch to carry out the law. Once again, not overseeing or going past the Congress and making laws, but the president, in this case, which was going to be the leader of the executive branch, was to carry out the law. They were to rest assured, they were to limit the powers of this individual so that they could not develop into a dictator or a tyranny or be considered like a monarchy, like a king. They wanted to definitely limit those powers, and under Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution states these powers, and over the next segment or two we will cover many of these powers and responsibilities of the president. The president, by term, is elected to 4-year terms. They can go only 2 terms before they are to move on and elect a new president. The president is term limited. Once again, it's a principle based on the fact that they don't want one individual dominating the government for an extended period of time. There are exceptions. Before this constitutional amendment was put into place, President Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected 4 times. He would have been president for 16 years had he not died during his last term of office. Throughout history, our presidents have been around for 8 or less years. So having said this, and looking and comparing it to the House of Representatives in the U.S. Senate, the president is term limited, where the members of the House of Representatives have to run for re-election every 2 years, but they can run for unlimited amount of terms. It's 6 years in the Senate, but once again, they can run until they decide not to run anymore, or they lose, whichever comes first. So the president is term limited to a maximum 8 years in office. To become president, you have to be the age of 35. We've come somewhat close to that a couple different times throughout history, with President Teddy Roosevelt and President Kennedy being the closest to that age limit. But you have to be 35 years old. But the kicker is you must be a natural-born citizen. You have to be born in the United States. Now, the closest thing we've ever had to a president not being born in the United States in recent memory is our current 44th President, Barack Obama. He was born in Hawaii. At one point in time, Hawaii was not a state, it was a territory. That obviously does not matter. You know, Barack Obama is a natural-born U.S. citizen. You have to have lived in the United States for the last 14 years consecutive. So, once again, qualifications of being 35 years old, natural-born here in the U.S., and having lived for the last 14 years in the United States. As we segue into part 2, the president has many roles, and I think oftentimes we get confused and think that the president is the be-all, end-all power of U.S. government. And the framers of our Constitution and our Constitution would completely disagree with that. They would adamantly deny that would be the case. The president does have many roles. He is a national and world leader. Our press obviously follows the president more closely because it is one individual acting out as that national leader. But the Congress is the most powerful element of our government. The president is the national and world leader. There is no single one person more powerful than the president of the United States in the federal government. However, that does not necessarily make them the most powerful. If you come look at part 2, we will get into some of those roles.